And joining me now to break this all down and continue this conversation on policing in America is the author of the new book, Confidence Chronicles, the greatest crime story, with a N around the parentheses for never ever told, Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. She served 20 years with the Los Angeles Police Department, where she worked within specialized units, patrols, and the LAPD famed gang unit. Sergeant Dorsey, it's always a pleasure having you on BNC Live. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, based on your experience, why are departments struggling to retain and recruit women officers?
Well, I think it's because, by and large, I don't think that there's an appetite, for certain groups of folks, women, Black folks particularly. And so the numbers are down around the nation. Here on the Los Angeles Police Department, Black people make up about 9% of the department. And so I know that there are qualified Black folks, there are certainly qualified women out there to do the job. But if you're not aggressively looking, and if you're not looking in the right places, universities and folks who have an interest in law enforcement, then you're going to have a disproportionate number of women. Most recently, the Denver Police Department reported that their recruitment of women was up. They had an academy class with 24 recruits. 10 of them were women. And when I joined the LAPD, we had a 50-50 split. So sometimes you need a consent decree to make police departments do the right thing.
And is it almost a sexist idea to say hiring more women would give better results in the communities, just in terms of just outreach?
Well, I don't think it's sexist, obviously, and I think girls rock. I think women do a better job. When you look at use of force wholesale, 9 times out of 10, it's men who get involved, who get uber aggressive because why? Their feelings get hurt because somebody's not following their orders, and they resort to use of force. As a female officer, I know firsthand, I can't beat up a guy. There's not one I can beat up. And so I had to resort to other techniques and tactics in addition to my training, in order to gain compliance. And in my 20 years wearing an LAPD uniform, I was never involved in a police shooting. I dealt with bad guys. I dealt with folks who ran. I dealt with folks who wanted to fight. I'll fight you. But women do a better job, I think, and statistics speak to that.
I believe you. I'm sure you can handle your own, Sergeant Dorsey. I'm not messing with you. If anything, I'm calling you if I'm in trouble. But, back to a serious matter. As a veteran of the LAPD, what barriers did you experience or know of from other female peers that you worked with in such a male-dominated field like law enforcement?
Well, certainly when I came on, women were not appreciated, and there was a consent decree when I was hired, and they didn't have any problem, the men didn't have any problem, white men, letting you know that they didn't want to work with a Black officer, more importantly, a Black female officer. I joined LAPD way before the Me Too movement. I was a movement of my own, a one-woman movement in some regards. But listen, obstacles are there and problems are there. And if you understand that you're going to encounter them when you get on this department, I think you will have a better chance of surviving, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so you need to have a plan when that occurs.
And based on that reaction that you just spoke of, did you ever feel like your life was in danger?
Well, when I was a young officer on probation, I had a training officer. I talk about it in my autobiography, Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate. My training officer actually put hands on me. But this was a time when, he went to the lieutenant, the watch commander, and said something, not the truth. And then the watch commander came to me and said, I want you two to go back out there and work this out. And I was like, sir, he put hands on me. Did he tell you that? So this was a whole different time. You just didn't go into the station and complain. But wholesale, did I ever feel that my life was in jeopardy? No, I'm a different personality, and there were certain things that I was not going to tolerate. And more importantly, I came on at a time when white officers really didn't know what to make of me. And so they didn't do a lot of police misconduct in front of me because they didn't think I would, air quote, have their back. And so that saved me from being exposed, I think, in a large part to a lot of foolishness.
I guess that was part of the question as well, the fact that they had to question someone as qualified as you that went through the same training as they did, that you would have their backs.
Well, it's a cultural thing, and if you're not a part of it, it's really hard to understand. And as I was listening to the prior segment about defunding the police and all that goes on, and I wish we could have a real conversation about that internal structure and how police officers get their feelings hurt and how they won't respond to certain radio calls in a timely fashion, and who suffers when you talk about defunding the police. The Black and brown community, because that's where crime rates are soaring. That's where officers sometimes will not respond so quickly. We saw last year during protests where officers, wholesale units, just walked away because they didn't like the fact that they couldn't mistreat people. And so we have to have an honest conversation about the problem if we really want to fix it.
Well, let's have it now.
Well, listen, I mean, so part of the problem is, police chiefs, it's not like they don't know what goes on these departments. Every police chief was once a police officer. And so I think that part of it is training, a small part. The big part for me is accountability. And so right now there's a lot of talk about qualified immunity. And we hear folks who look like me, Tim Scott and Jim Clyburn, saying that, qualified immunity is something that we could wait for. Tim Scott says it's a non-starter. And so if they don't have the intestinal fortitude to deal with that right now, then why don't we look at decertifying police officers who act in a way that's contrary to their training and policy? And we have a legislator here in California, Senator Bradford, who's putting forth legislation to decertify officers. If you can't get them off the job, get them out of the field. Working patrol is not a right. Derek Chauvin had 18 personnel complaints. You think Police Chief Arredondo didn't know who he was and who he was dealing with, yet they let him live to offend again? We heard from a Black corporal over in Louisiana, state trooper, regarding the death of Ronald Green. Officers lied for 2 years, hid that video, and he knew that. And so we have to understand that the fish rots from the head, and we have to look to the police chiefs, sheriffs, and commissioners and hold their feet to the fire to have an honest discussion about accountability, what that looks like, and how we really get it.
Sergeant Dorsey, we got to bring you back because we definitely need to finish this conversation. Thank you for starting it
Thank
here
you.
with us on BNC Live. It's always a pleasure having you. We look forward to welcoming you back.